So in other words, we're going to put them in a behavioral economic situation, possibly designed by Cass Sunstein or people like this. And in that behavioral economic situation, the Pavlovian thing to do for these doctors is to deny you care so that they don't go over their fixed quota. So in other words, he's basically saying, I will make the doctors into the gatekeepers and austerity cops of the system. Not the market purely, not the bureaucrat, but a combination of the two. And that is what Obama is now going with. That is how Obama says, I will lower the intrinsic cost of medical care. Well, of course, you can't. Not that way. What you can do is find new ways to deny it. Right? You can find new ways to tamper with the patient relationship. So we talk about Medicare in this context because this is a big part of the federal budget, and it's going to be a very explosive part of this entire debate. Suffice it to say that late last week, the Ryan plan was supported. It was given support by all the Republicans in the House except for 4. So all Republicans are now on record saying, we wish to strip elderly Americans over 65 of their economic rights, which somehow we could afford. In 1965, we could afford it, but now we can't afford it anymore. There's never an explanation. Well, if you could afford it then, why can't you afford it now? Well, because the baby boom generated a bunch of other explanations, none of them very convincing. But the entire Republican Party is now basically a revolver pointed at the heart of everybody over 65. This is what they want. Normally, this would be an open and shut case politically. The problem is, what do you do when the other side is led by somebody like Obama, who's telling you, basically, I have a way to do it that you won't even notice with my independent payment advisory board, which will deny you care by essentially ruling out these technologies. And if that doesn't work, I'll try integrated care. You see what I mean? This is a terrible predicament that we're in.
I'm speaking with economic historian and author Webster Tarpley. Today's show, Austerity Psychosis Grips Washington, D.C. I'm Bonnie Faulkner. This is Guns and Butter. The day after Obama's George Washington University speech saw the passage of the fiscal 2011 budget resolution negotiated by the congressional Republicans and the White House. The bill cuts domestic social spending by $38.5 billion, the largest one-year cut ever enacted by Congress.
It's more. Wait, it's more.
Well, yes, let's get into that. What is a budget resolution as opposed to a budget, and what is contained in this bill?
Well, everything in Congress has to go through twice, right? Once to be authorized, once to be appropriated. And this is a general framework within which all the other parts are going to fit. Right? This stuff is set up by a post-Watergate law from 1974 or so, which is very dubious in its own right, because it's all geared towards austerity. The idea is essentially that the Republicans they've made their position clear with Ryan. But now let's look at this compromise. This was the deed done in the dead of night at about a little bit before midnight on Friday night last week, that Obama negotiated this with Congressman Boehner, right, the Speaker of the House, and with Harry Reid of the Senate Democratic majority. But the interesting thing is the only group of people that really have any different view were completely excluded, and this were the House Democrats. And Congresswoman Pelosi, now deprived of all power, was not even part of the talk. She was nowhere. She was a non-person. And she then came out and said, I have no stake in this. I don't own it. And she voted against it. And I'll talk about the vote, because the vote is very, very interesting in its own right. But let's just see what this is. It is a cut of $80 billion compared to the budget proposed by Obama. In other words, in December, January, Obama elaborated a budget for fiscal 2011, the year we're in now. It started last October 1st, goes to September 30th. Obama had asked for essentially $80 billion more than what is contained in this wretched deal. And we're only finding out, gradually what monstrosities are in this. So this was agreed under the threat of a government shutdown by the reactionary Republicans. Of course, it's widely understood that a government shutdown by these reactionaries would essentially be a defeat for them. In other words, there's a very good chance that a lot of people would not have gotten their Social Security checks, would not have gotten their Veterans Administration's payments. All federal workers would have gotten no checks. All federal contractors, this gets to be like defense contractors, would have been cut off. A lot of them would have gone bankrupt if it had gone beyond a week or two. So you could say that in a sense, Obama acted with calculated cowardice in backing down on this. And his entire negotiating method was to make a series of unilateral compromises. In other words, instead of saying at the beginning, no cuts, increases, right? Because we have a depression. We need more money for social programs in a depression. He immediately began cutting and essentially got himself to this point. Now let's look at some of the cuts. There's an economic part, and then there's the policy rider part, which is also quite outrageous. But just in terms of the cuts, first in the social programs that would have to be defended rather than thrown under the bus, as Obama was willing to do. We have, for example, WIC, right? Women, infants, children, high-protein meals for expectant mothers and nursing mothers and babies. That's been cut. Community health programs have been cut. We have other nutritional programs for women and children are also cut. We have children's health. I don't know if I mentioned that. Children's health programs by themselves have also been cut. So you have a whole series of things like this. Then you get into the area of what can we say, community support, community block grants. These can be used for things like summer jobs for teenagers, things like this. $1 billion cut out of that. Unbelievable. This is one of the things that makes me say, this is a budget that is very likely to lead to riots. If you remember the Los Angeles riot of 1991 under Bush the Elder, I see this leading to riots in the summer this year. If not this year, then certainly next year. Highway funding is cut. Now, these are real jobs in real production that are cut out of the highway budget. The fast rail, I think this is in many ways the most tragic. Any modern country is going to need a fast rail program, and these are things that have to be built. So many jobs connected with this. $3 billion cut from the high-speed rail on the anniversary, just about, of the French TGV. So the French have been able to go from Paris to Marseille in a couple of hours. They've had fast rail for 30 years. The United States really still does not have fast rail. The Acela train really doesn't qualify. Help for crime victims is cut. Money for state and local police is cut. How about this? $1 billion for the reconstruction and repair of federal buildings, cut. Then we have the Environmental Protection Agency. Now, some of the stuff they do is controversial, but some of it is absolutely fundamental, right? You got to keep, mercury and lead out of food, things like this. $1.6 billion cut from the EPA, and so on down the line. So you look at that. That's a pretty devastating austerity program. I think it comes to about 15% of total non-defense discretionary, and that's an important number I'll get back to in a minute. But then there are policy riders, and since I am here in Washington, I have to tell you, the District of Columbia is in rebellion against Obama as a result of one of the policy riders, and this was that the District of Columbia is no longer allowed to choose to spend its own money raised through local taxes in the district to pay for abortions for poor women. Now, whatever you think the merits of this case one way or the other, there's supposed to be a budget autonomy for the District of Columbia. And what we hear from the Washington Post is that at a certain moment in these talks, it's Boehner and Obama. And Obama leans over to Boehner and says, John, I will give you D.C. abortion, even though I don't like it. This is outrageous. On Monday last week, a week ago, the mayor of the District of Columbia, Vince Gray, the head of the city council, Kwame Brown, and several members of the district council, most of these people are black Democrats, needless to say. They went and got themselves arrested at the Dirksen Senate office building, protesting Obama. And the chants were basically that Obama threw the district under the bus. Hey, Obama, if you don't stand with us, we won't stand with you. The district is not yours to bargain away, right? Don't use us as a bargaining chip. And this has caused, I think, a very, very deep alienation in one of the most, important black communities anywhere in the United States. And I think this is pretty much across the board. After the passage of this compromise, Barbara Lee, well-known member of the Black Caucus in the House, says that the fiscal 2011 budget is a Tea Party checklist targeting programs that are vulnerable. It's shameful. It's a moral disgrace. Now, this is fine, except now when push comes to shove, where's the primary challenger to Obama? Because it's clear, as many columnists now in the D.C. press are saying, Obama believes that the black community in Washington and elsewhere has absolutely no alternative to him, that they're locked in to voting for Obama no matter what he does. And I think this is dangerous. We also had a kind of rebellion among white progressives, the PCCC, right? Progressive Communities for Change, Progressive Communities for Community Change. They say if Obama goes on and cuts Medicare and Medicaid, they will not fundraise for him. And many liberal activists who meet here every week at the Capitol Hilton, they have their, you have the right-wing group that meets with Grover Norquist and the tax freaks over at his office, but you have this progressive group. They were originally planning to have a meeting to launch Obama's re-election campaign, which he also announced in the same fateful week. But they decided not to, that the only thing they could do is put out emails trying to pressure Obama to stop selling them out. And this process has now been engaged. You notice that after this happened, Obama went on television with the Washington Monument behind him and the Lincoln Memorial, saying these are both going to be open tomorrow, right? They won't be shut down. And I have carried out the biggest single budget cut in U.S. history. And he boasted of this. This is now a credential for a Democratic president. Well, he was always a neoliberal. He was always somebody interested in following orders from Wall Street. Now, there's also a Congressional Budget Office report that says the savings realized from this are not $40 billion or the $80 billion, which is the real figure, but only some $350 million. That is baloney, because what they mean by that is only $350 million spent between now and September 30th is going to be cut. But in the out years, in other words, in fiscal 12, fiscal 13, the thing that they just passed will indeed cut expenditure by $80 billion. And in doing so, it will destroy an estimated 560,000 jobs total. It was estimated when the Tea Party came out and said, we demand $100 billion in cuts, certain economists came out and said, well, that's about 700,000 jobs destroyed. Now it's only $80 billion. So with one half of the government, right? One half of the legislative branch, Boehner and this Koch brigade of reactionary Republicans were able to extort 80% of their original lunatic budget demand, thanks to the eagerness of Obama to capitulate. So that destroys 560,000 jobs. So whatever the unemployment rate is, it will tick up due to this. So that's essentially the story. That the appalled consternation of left liberals who voted for Obama and believed him, I think this is going to take some time to sink in. But I think the idea is now it's been twice in a row. We had the tax cuts for the rich extended. We even had this attack on Social Security through the payroll tax. And now we've got the fiscal 2011 budget, a shameful moral disgrace, which it seems to me would let us conclude, if the Democratic Party is not a totally moribund cadaver of a social institution, there will have to be a primary challenge to Obama. The sooner the better.